It's time.
Is your best Bruce Buffer impersonation?
Yep. Is that Bruce? Which one's which?
Isn't Bruce Buffer the UFC main headliner?
They're both buffers. I just forget who's who.
Oh, I think Bruce is the... Wait, are they brother? Are they related?
Dude, you gotta go check out that story sometime.
Fuck, are you serious?
They're half brothers, but they didn't even know about each other until they were adults.
No way.
Yeah, it's wild.
But they were both born with the golden voice. That's okay. I gotta fucking Yep.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say the Buffer story, and now I'm gonna look back at that in a week, and I'm gonna be like, "What the fuck is the Buffer story? Like about the days of 28K internet or what?"
Buffer story, right? Everybody's waiting for it to buffer.
God, it takes forever to get a picture of some boobies.
All right, it's done buffering. Come back in here, watch the movie, hit the play, and it plays for like 2 minutes. It starts buffering. Everybody just goes, "Nah, God." Dang.
I remember just downloading movies and just watching them that way. Like I didn't start streaming until way late because I couldn't handle buffering.
Oh yeah, buffering sucked.
It's the fucking worst. All right, you ready?
Yep.
We're gonna talk about rigs, Tim. Yeah. Let's talk about rigs. We're gonna do our best to do one of these beginner guide situations to rigs. And Tim, tell me why rigs could never be contained in one episode that takes an hour. Like, how come?
Because have you ever seen Finding Nemo? For anybody watching, you ever seen Finding Nemo?
Okay.
And
I'm with you for now.
And you got the Finding Nemo, or Nemo, not Finding Nemo, but Nemo ends up going to school, and he's got that man ray teacher, and that man ray teacher is talking about the elements, and he's like, "There's potassium chloride, and he's just going off. Like,
yeah, I love that.
So we could do that with rigs.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of rigs, and there's fresh water rigs, there's saltwater rigs, there's rigs for specific species of fish, there's rigs that are made for current situations, and by current I mean like in the water, like moving, not like
water. Yeah.
Not like this rig is for today in this day and age.
That's like, the way I took it right away, and I'm like, what? How does that even work?
Yeah. Just so you guys know, in the past it didn't work. In the future it will not work. It is for today. So get out there and try it now, because tomorrow is too late. But no, which could be something where it's like in the regulations, like this isn't going to fly in a couple of years for whatever reason. They're allowing it now. Get out there and use it before they say
yeah, like an Alabama rig, right? Isn't that called an Alabama rig?
The Alabama rig is like, or
we're not going to talk about the Alabama rig in detail, but like, please go.
Or the umbrella rig is like another term of it, but it's like multiple. The reason that it's, the Alabama or umbrella is because it basically kind of looks like the skeleton of an umbrella without the actual, like canvas part of it.
Yep.
Because it's multiple wires that jut out. And then you have a bunch of like small swim baits all around it. You're technically fishing like a bunch of baits all at once.
They all have hooks
in our waters, right? Here at in Minnesota, you can't fish more than one bait at a time.
Right.
And you can get those that are fishing like 5 or 6 of them at the same time. And they just like, you have one main line with a bunch of swim baits all around it.
Right.
So that's not legal here.
It's made to look like a school, like a small school of swimmers, right? Or a bait fish, swimming bait fish. That's what
it's like a school of bait fish. Yep. And
but I've seen videos where the people, at least.
I've seen videos where people have caught 3 before. I'm sure there's a rare one out there where they caught like 4 or 5. But yeah, like 3 bass at once, and they're just like, isn't this amazing? And I'm like, seems kind of fucked up, honestly. You're catching 3 bass with one cast
at one time. Yeah. No, I agree. It does have a being from up here and having the always had to fish one. I agree. I have that feeling. It's like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, it just seems weird. Yeah. There's some stuff that's just allowed in other states that we don't get to do. So when I see them, I'm just like, whoa, that's, hey. Like we can't use game fish to go fish for the other fish, but they do it down south. They'll put a sunfish, like hook the sunfish by the back and cast them out. They'll like,
oh wow,
they'll like purposely target sunfish, catch one, or bluegill, catch one,
and use it as
and
bait.
then like hook it in the back and throw it back out. And as soon as they do that, I go, oh, I don't know about that.
Right.
Because up here, that is illegal. You cannot use a game fish to catch a game fish.
Right.
You have to use a bait fish.
Right.
So, anyways.
Interesting.
But yes.
Okay. We are going to talk about some more rigs in detail. But let me ask one thing, because we were just talking about a bass rig. And when I was doing research, it seemed like all of these were bass rigs. All of them that we're going to talk about. I'm not going to get into them. I'm not going to just go down the list. But that's my first question. If you want to go down the list, feel free. But like, is everything we're going to cover a bass rig?
Nope.
No,
one of the Lindy rig is famous a walleye rig. It will catch bass.
Okay.
Like you can catch anything on most stuff.
Yeah.
But, there's the rare occasion where, there's certain shit like top water baits. You're not going to catch a lot of walleyes on those, but there's weird, rare occasions.
Okay.
But a Lindy rig, you'll understand. You're just dragging live bait, so you got a chance at catching anything.
Okay, we'll get there. And I know. Okay, so let's kick it off with the simple one, the bobber rig. You told me
the bobber.
You were like, bobber rig. That's what I'm like. What? No. Wait.
Yeah. It's a rig.
Yeah. I never thought about it that way. So I was just like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I just said it in the fishing news. So if you're over there on Real AF TV YouTube channel, Real AF TV, fuck it. I'm blowing it.
Fuck it. Yeah.
If you're seeing this on a Wednesday, right, and you missed the fishing news, go find the full one. But I was talking about that, Tim, about how we were young, so we were fishing bobbers, right?
Yep.
But then I said, this isn't just for rookies, right? Bring it up on the podcast.
No. Definitely not just for rookies. Okay. And I completely forgot about getting a visual representation for the bobber rig.
Yeah.
But as I am talking here, I am very quickly drawing a photo.
A perfect representation of a bobber rig.
Yeah.
Is it safe to say that it's the simplest form of a hook on a line?
I mean, it can be. Yeah, I mean it's easy to rig up, especially if you're using the Pokeball style bobbers where it's just like a hook. Reference. Yeah. Or there are ones that look kind of like the slip floats, which a slip float, I apologize, I could have done better, but this is the slip float style where it's like this and you got the pointy end here.
Mm-hmm.
I drew lines, but they have ones where on the bottom there's a spring and a little notch, and you just pull the spring up, you put the line in there, and then you let the spring go and it holds it in place.
Right.
So there's those kinds where you don't have to worry about this slip float, the line goes through, but I'll explain that in a minute. Those ones, you can literally tie on a hook, and then you just add the rest. You pinch on your little lead weights, or now they have tin weights and stuff, whatever they're made out of. So you get the little split shot weights. You crimp them on.
Is the split shot the thing that, it means you just crimp it right onto the line?
Yep. You just crimp it right on. So it's like split in the middle. You put it on the line. You smush it down.
Yeah. And it just locks in right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And you put a couple of those on to make the bobber sit upright. Plus, it gets the bait down to where it is. If you don't have those on, like if you got a minnow or a leech that's swimming, if you don't have weight to bring it down, it's just going to swim wherever it goes. Could be at the surface. You know,
could be at the surface, right? Yeah, I never thought about that, but like wherever it wants to go. Yeah.
Yeah, wherever it wants to go. So, but the other thing is, if you get the weight dialed in to the buoyancy of the bobber, then when the fish comes and grabs it, it's not pulling down super hard. You'll just watch that bobber disappear.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily set off any alarms that it's fighting something else.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It just takes it down. A lot of times with live bait, you don't have to worry much about it spitting it out, because like once it has it in there, it knows it's a fish. It doesn't understand the rest of the shit. It doesn't go like, yeah, this is a live bait, but there's something poking me. Like, I think they're kind of used to that. They're just like, that fucking spines on this fish are poking my mouth. You know, like it happens with the bait that they're actually eating all the time. So,
sure.
But yeah, so if you dial in the weight, that'll help you out. But yeah, I
never thought about that before.
There are levels to it, though, because you can go. That is like a very simple form of just putting a hook on and tossing it out. It's going to sink to the bottom, whatever. You put the float on, and then it'll, you set it to 5 feet. You cast it out. It's 5 feet down. You're not getting any bites. You can try a little bit deeper, try a little bit shallower. Whatever it is, but you can cast it out and you can kind of leave it right where you want it to be. You think there's a fish there, you cast it out and you leave it sit right there. And then you don't have to worry about moving it, you just
wait and just watch that bobber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With all other presentations, for the most part, you have to keep moving it. And that's why floats can really come in handy on certain situations. Like when you're going out fishing and it's a really tough day, but you have them on your graph. There's some guys that'll drive around in there if they're in like bigger bodies of water and it's deeper down and they're not spooking the fish by driving them over them. They'll like drive. They'll see a fish on their radar, and like as they see a fish, they'll just cast a float like right out the back, like because their radar is shooting down. They know there's a fish right down there.
Right.
They have it set to the right depth. Because they're driving over a flat, whatever, they see it, they just cast it out and then let it sit there. They know that there's a fish right there, and now they're just dangling a live bait right in front of their face.
Right. Just letting the live bait do its thing, get its scent in the water, move around, whatever.
You got a leech that's just doing, the wave thing right in front of them. And that walleye like, I don't feel like eating. And that thing's just dancing in front of its face. And it's like, I guess I get eat,
Right. And I never thought about it. You just introduced a new word to me after all these years, is float. Never thought of a bobber as a float. I always just called it a bobber.
Yeah. The float. Yeah. I think that's technically what you would call this, is like a float rig.
Sure.
Or whatever. But so if you're talking float rig, ignores this. That's for later. Don't skip ahead. So you got, this is, again, apologize. This was like 30 seconds that I drew this in.
Yeah, that's fine.
So
it's good.
This
visual aid.
is like this is like your line tie, or, so they have, it's like a tube that has a knot already like wrapped around it. You'll see them. It says bobber stops. Oh, so that's your first step. If we're rigging this up, you're putting that on first. And then there's a little piece of plastic that's on the inside of those. It's a little tube.
This isn't for your like Pokeball or lock-in type.
This is not.
No.
This,
you're going somewhere else. Yeah. Okay. I know what you're talking about.
The Pokeballs that lock in they don't need that because they have that locking mechanism on them. Yeah. Because the Pokeball style has like a piece of metal that's bent on the top and the bottom. And when you push them pieces on the top and the bottom are like spring loaded. When you push those, it exposes those hooks. You put the line through there. When you let it go, it'll crimp it down, and they can the line can slide back and forth through one of those. But when you hook it on the top and the bottom, it locks it in pretty securely.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
But the big disadvantage of that is you're really only going to be able to set your depth at like 6 feet or less.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Like, what happens when you start to hit 7 and 8 and
yeah, so you're not going to be able to really cast. Even 6 feet of line out is going to be awkward as hell to cast. But with a float, the float goes down to where your weights are. So you're talking like float weights. Maybe you have a swivel and like a fluorocarbon leader that's a couple of feet. So you're talking like regardless of how deep you have your line set to, you're only casting like 3-4 feet maybe.
Right. Of line. The rest is all in the reel, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. So you have your bobber stop, and you slide. It's a plastic tube inside of this kind of like curled piece of rope, and it's set up like a knot.
Yeah.
And you slide that onto your line, and you pull out the plastic tube down the bottom so you can pull it off the line.
Yeah.
And once you get that, you just kind of cinch the line up. There's like 2 different sides, and when you pull it, it'll tighten onto your line a little bit. And that's what's going to stop your bobber from going up any farther. So wherever you have that set is where your depth is going to be. So you have that knot, and then if the hole on the bobber is too big, because they make a bunch of different kinds. Some of them are very the higher quality ones, so the lines really move through freely, will have like a copper ring on the top, and it's a bigger hole.
Oh, really?
And then to have the line will move through those really freely, but the bobber stop a lot of times isn't enough to stop it. Like the bobber stop can go through it. So in that case, you have to have a bead in between the two.
So you have to go. You have to do like bobber stop, not a bead, and then the bobber on those.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Bobber stop, bead, and then bobber. And then sometimes I'll go a bead even if it doesn't need that, because you can get beads that glow in the dark.
Oh,
and just help you see it a little bit better. Yeah, you can get the line ties or the bobber stops that'll glow in the dark as well.
Sure.
And bobbers that glow in the dark. You can get light up bobbers.
Yeah, I know we talked about that in our night fishing episode for sure.
Yeah. So you have,
and this is the line's going through everything that you're talking about.
So everything that we've talked about so far. So you have the line goes through this, but then you have it, you can tie it on there once it's through it, because you move that plastic piece out. And then the line goes through the bobber, so it goes in the top, out the bottom.
Yep.
And then once it goes down, like the next step would be like a weight.
Right.
But the weight you don't have to put on right away. So I should say the next step would probably be a swivel. Because you're still using those
crimp weights, cinch weights.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. How I tie it is it's going to a swivel. Now, some people will tie it to a swivel that's like this, where this is a swivel with like a safety pin. I don't know if that's really showing up very good.
I can see it pretty good.
You see that safety pin?
Yeah.
So that's a swivel with a safety pin thing.
Yep.
And they'll have like pre-snelled hooks. So like a snelled hook is like the hook is tied on to a small leader length, and then there's like a loop on the one side. So all you gotta do is put that loop onto the safety pin.
Yep.
So you can get those pre-snelled hooks like that if you want to do that, and you can go to this. But what I do is I will tie on, like, this is a bigger one than I would use, but this is just a swivel where all that is like it's just literally
just a swivel.
Just a swivel. It's one loop on each side.
Yeah.
And that's so the bait can kind of like swim freely without twisting up your line like crazy. Plus,
Sure.
it's a really easy way to go from one line to the other. Because when you're bobber fishing,
Uh-huh.
you want your line to float. Because if it doesn't
Oh.
float, it can sink and screw everything up. I've accidentally done it before with like fluorocarbon line, where your line going from your rod to your bobber sinks,
Uh-huh.
and then when you try to reel it up, because your line is underneath the water, it like pulls the bobber down every time instead of the line just floating on the
Oh.
surface.
Really?
Yeah, so like a monofilament will float, certain braided lines float. I don't ever use braided lines for bobber setups, but you could. But I always use
You're like, it'll
monofilament.
work.
So yeah, it'll work as long as you get the ones that float. Not all of
Right.
them
Right.
float. Some of them are made to sink.
Yep.
But so you go down to that swivel with your main line, and then from that swivel down, I will use a fluorocarbon leader because a fluorocarbon is far more uh, invisible underwater to the fish.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, and it's more abrasive resistant. It doesn't have any stretch, but it's it's a good fluorocarbon, can withstand more than some of the other ones. It doesn't get cut
Sure.
off as easy.
Yeah.
And then
It'll take the teeth of
yeah,
walleye or
yeah,
northern, even if you end up
yep,
getting.
yeah. And the
It'll take
walleyes
it
they
better.
have and the walleyes have like cone shaped teeth, so a lot of times you don't really have to worry about it too much. But
Oh, okay.
it doesn't help to have, a more abrasive or
It doesn't hurt to have a
more
more.
abrasive resistant.
Right. Yeah. You got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, anyways, that's it in a nutshell. Above, depending on who you are, whatever you plan on doing, like your leader length can be whatever you choose. And if you want to put a weight on your leader, if it's long enough, you can. If you use a shorter leader, you can just put a couple of weights above the swivel. The weight placement is really yours to decide. And sometimes, you add, you don't have the sizes that you want, so you're like grabbing like a big one. You're like,
Yeah.
that's a little bit, that's close enough, but maybe I'll put a little bit more, and then you're grabbing like one more small one and put it on there.
Yeah.
Kind of trying to dial it in and stuff. But yeah, and then the beauty of that is that wherever you put that bobber stop is where the line will slide through the bobber until it gets to that bobber stop, and that'll just reel back up into the reel, unless, it works, but if you're using like a closed faced reel, like with a little kid, like how I have set up for my son, and it fucking gets stuck when he tries to cast, that can be a problem. Even with like the nicer like Zebco ones. I don't know, there are higher end ones that I've never dicked around with, so I don't know if those ones have the capability of doing it
Okay.
better without causing issues, because there are some that are pretty expensive.
Right.
But those ones are a way different reeling mechanism than the open face, like spinning reel,
Right.
or a bait caster. Like that one has like a little knob that pops out when you push that button.
Yeah.
And holds it in place, and when you let it go, it like sucks in, and that's how the line can go out. And it's kind of hard to explain, but take it from me. If you reel it all the way into the reel and you try to cast it out, sometimes it works. Sometimes it gets stuck and your live bait goes fucking flying off the hook because
there goes a minnow.
Shit. Minnow. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so that's just your basic bobber rig, but that's really nice because you can really dial it in. If you're sitting in one spot, and you're sitting in 17 feet of water, and you're like, I want to put it right above the bottom, you can go to like 16 and a half feet, 16 feet of water, and you're like, I know I'm a foot off. And if they're not biting it, like a lot of crappies, they always say that they don't swim down to get their bait. They always like to swim up, so you can set it higher above them and catch it.
Them.
Yeah. But also when they say, oh, I've never really seen, I've heard Al Linder talking about it. Like, I've had crappies in the fish tank, and we'll sprinkle in food. They won't swim down to grab it. They'll like try to get it, and if it gets past them, they won't go down. And it's like, well, then why the fuck am I catching them when I'm jigging off the bottom, Al? So yeah, there's some stuff where it's like I believe that they won't swim down, but also they're definitely going close enough down. Maybe they're hitting it when I pop it back up off the bottom, but they're definitely still paying attention to it when it goes down.
Sure.
Because I'm not ripping it 10 feet off the bottom. I'm ripping it a couple feet off the bottom, and I'm still
Right.
getting bit
Right.
when I'm trying to jig for walleyes at sunset. I'm catching crappies at the bottom of the lake.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, but yeah, you can kind of mess around with that, or like, there's like a really weedy area and jigging it or running anything through it is not a good idea, but you think that there's some fish in there, you can literally set it to right above the weeds. And then your bait will just dance above the weeds, and then they'll just come out of the abyss
and come out of the abyss and bam.
Yeah, which is what we did a couple of weekends ago. My wife was catching crappies in the middle of the day because they were in those thicker weeds. They moved in the
and the weeds were
nighttime,
covering, like setting the temperature just right for them.
Yeah, well, it's setting the temperature just right and giving them cover. I think there's muskies and stuff, and I think they kind of like hide in the weeds during the daytime, and then at night I think they get a little bit more brave. Like the lower light hours, they'll come out and feed, and I guess cross their fingers they don't get ate. I don't know. I don't know if they're smart enough to really know that kind of stuff, but yeah, later at night they'll come out and they'll just eat that stuff up. But yeah. In a nutshell, that's a bobber for you. That's you can use the cheap old school way and do fine. But honest to God, I outfish everybody in the boat and we use the same thing. And I think a big part of it is because I have that fluorocarbon from the swivel down.
Right.
Like, I don't think the fish are spooked by mine as much.
Right.
And I like to dial in that weight so it doesn't take much to pull it down. So they might be getting bit, and sometimes a crappie will suck in the bait and not really take it that well, and then kind of like spit it back out. And my bobber is all of a sudden just like slightly going down and to the right or whatever, and I just go, that's a fish. That's not my bait doing that. Right. And then I'll set the hook,
and then bam. Yeah, and that's actually something I was really intrigued by when you said it. Put a weight on. Ooh, maybe not quite enough. Put another little one on and try to dial it in. I always thought, I don't know, maybe just aesthetics or something, or that like imposter syndrome problem that I deal with of like, there's something wrong with your rig if you have put more than one weight on it. Like, because I've only ever really seen one weight on there, and it's just like, and then you're like, no, put one big one on, put another little one on, get it dialed in. It's like, why not? Why do I have this stupid mental hang up on like, you can only put one weight on?
I almost always use two.
But really?
Just because I don't normally have like one big one. One's normally not enough. I normally go two all the time. And then sometimes, like, depending, there's different size bobbers. Sometimes two with the swivel and the hook that you have on is just a little bit too much. I've had it before where like the bobber seems to be sitting fine, and then all of a sudden it like starts going down, and you lift the hook and there's nothing there, and you go, I'm pretty sure the weights are just slowly pulling it down every time. So then you gotta like dial it back and try to figure it out and stuff. But yeah, but you definitely don't want to get it like too much. And bobber fishing can work when the waves are out there, if there's not a lot going on, if it's not super choppy, and you can bobber fish when there's waves still, and the bobber moves with the waves, and the bait's on the bottom doing the same thing, just kind of dancing. But if you have it too close to perfect, every time that wave comes, it might go down a little bit or seem like it's going underneath,
right,
where you could do that when it's calm. So it's just kind of a game to play with some of that stuff, learning curve, having multiple weights. A lot of times you can go to the store and they'll have like these little wheels of like multiple different sizes. Turn, like it's like one of those pill
Yeah, the
Keeper
Monday,
things.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday
Yeah.
pillbox
Yep.
in the circle.
Yep. Just turn it to the one you want and then pop a couple of those
Half ounce,
fuckers out. But
quarter
don't eat them
ounce.
because they're lead and you'll die.
But don't pop them like pills because you'll die. Yeah, and it's you just drove home so much how it's not just a rookie thing. How my perception of bobber fishing is just that, like, that's the easy route. Like that's just what you do when you don't know what else to do, and you just are like, you just drove home in so many different ways of like why it's not. And maybe the little Pokeball bobber with the hook on it and a weight, okay, maybe that's like really rookie, maybe that's for the kids or something. Yeah, sure, you could look at it that way, but like bobber fishing, float fishing, however you just like, nope, not a rookie thing. Totally like legitimate. Don't feel weird if you're out there bobber fishing. Like,
yeah, for sure. Go and
legit
cast
way
you a
to
bobber.
fish.
Yeah. And if you're like fishing the crappie spawn or whatever, like don't even feel bad. Like, I mean, don't feel bad about using the bobbers that aren't like the slip bobbers if you're fishing in water that's shallow enough. You know, obviously if you want to be fishing in like super deep water, you don't really have much of a choice. You gotta learn how to, you gotta nut up or shut up, you know. you can't be using those bobbers there unless you're fishing right over the side of the boat and then you're like setting it to deep, because you're not going to be casting that shit, you know.
Right.
It's just not really going to be a possibility with that much line out. But if you're going to fish in like a couple of feet of water, you can definitely put on bobbers that, you know, there's some foam ones that have like lead weights on the bottom of the bobber, and it's kind of the same idea. They have the same kind of mechanism on the top and the bottom. And those were the ones that I liked. I never really cared for the Pokeball ones, but you get those weighted bobbers, and then you have your weight and that hook. You cast that thing a fucking mile, dude. And then awesome. You just, you know, it makes it fun fighting the fish too.
I bet,
because you're bobber fishing, you wait for you're like almost squinting, like they go down. You even see it? Yeah, it's gone for sure. I can't see it anymore.
Right.
So, and then you fight it for a half hour because it's so far away.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, in the you know, some people do say that you can get fish to bite way better if they don't see you first. Some it's definitely a true thing in some situations, but I don't necessarily, you know, think it's true of everything. Some people would be like, oh, if they see you, they're not going to bite. And I say, well, kind of bullshit. Like, go and check out the video that we have on YouTube of me crappie fishing. I'm like, I can see them, they can see me, pretty sure. Just got them. I don't know what that means.
Right.
Anyways, but yeah, that's don't feel bad about bobber fishing at all. Everybody does it. We all do it. We all use floats.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, I'll throw up a finger to anybody driving past me if they want to talk shit. Ooh, you bobber fishing? Just be like, I got fish in the live well.
Fuck you.
Deal with it.
Should we talk about drop shots now?
Hell yeah, let's do it. I got the picture right here. Look at this drop shot. Okay, drop shot. When you're talking, this is something that you're going to be doing on a spinning rig, a spinning reel. Having the reel on the top is going to be a lot harder on you. So you can try it with other stuff, but I wouldn't recommend it. You know, you could try to do it with a baitcaster. You could try to do it with a spinner.
Interesting.
They do have a close face with a trigger on it. That would work too, but it's like the way the reel is weighted, you know, like the close face with the trigger actually puts it on the bottom.
So then you can pull the trigger, because like if you think about a trigger on a gun, how it's on the underside of the gun, that's the same concept here of the, I got you.
But honestly, if you're trying on a drop shot where you're using a little bit more of an advanced technique and you're using a spin shot and you're not a child, I am gonna judge you. I'm gonna be like, what are you doing? God, what are you doing? I'm not gonna say what, you know, that you can't do that. But at the same time, it's like, we're not to spinning reels yet. So
They're not that hard. They're not that hard.
Yeah.
Just try it out.
I will say you're wild, but it's at the same time, it's just one of those things where I'd be like giving you shit. I don't care. Do whatever you want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
But also trying to just give you that like that weird sideways encouragement of like just go upgrade. It's okay. They're not that hard to learn.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
No.
Anyways,
Don't be afraid.
So this
drop shot.
I didn't. These don't necessarily like line up because I drew the hook and the weight separately, and I'm like, oh, they're close enough. I should just draw this because this is basically what it is.
Okay.
A drop shot rig. Don't worry about this weight here. You see that weight?
Yep.
So you got your hook. That's your line from your rod.
Yep.
Down to your hook.
Yep.
And then a line down to the weight.
Yes. And
that's
hook
it.
Is sideways. That's the way I put like line sideways hook, line weight. I'm like,
yes.
Sideways hook.
So you can tie. There are different kind of knots that you can tie. You can just go to YouTube and be like best drop shot knot. There's a couple of different ones that'll get you there. It's not that bad. But like a hook like this, where it's just like a regular hook, and then you can see on this side, it kind of like sets up. So like if I tied it perfect with the way that sits, it would sit like this because that's where the knot would be, you know.
Yeah, because the eyelet, the eyelet just looks like it's set up to sit sideways if you do it right.
So you could use that and it would, you know, there'd be less stuff visible in the water and you use your drop shot knot or whatever. But what I drew here, because I didn't have it, VMC makes what's called a spin shot.
Oh.
And that is basically a little like swivel. So it's like a loop on each piece with a little metal bar. It doesn't really have a swivel, but then the hook is set up. So the line tie, there's just a metal rod that goes through it with a loop on each side. So you have the line that comes from your rod, you tie it on there.
Okay.
And then you just cut yourself another piece of line.
Oh.
And then have that go from the bottom one to your weight.
So does it have the hook on it already too?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It's called a VMC spin shot.
Yeah.
They come 4 to a pack. Unless maybe you get some of the bigger ones.
Not swim shot.
Yeah.
Spin shot.
Spin shot. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And it makes it easy. You just line from your rod to the top of the hook, tie that on. And then from the bottom, you just have, you know, like what I do is I'll take out some slack line. I'll cut a piece that's like 2 feet long just to give me some room to like tie knots and stuff. And then I'll like tie on the line from the reel to the top hook. And then I'll tie on that piece that I cut off to the bottom.
Yeah.
And then with these weights, they have
that long one.
Yeah. Well, these are both.
Yeah. So you have one that's like, it's longer and then you have one that's just a ball.
Yep. Here, I'll explain that in a second. But like,
okay.
See how that's kind of like a teardrop, like opening at the top.
Yeah.
It's real thin, or like where the 2 pieces of metal meet. It's like kind of got a wedge there. You don't have to tie a knot to the drop shot. You put your line in between there and you just pull it down, and how thin that piece is will just pinch onto the line.
Oh,
and because the fish isn't biting that weight, you don't have to worry about it. You're not fighting the fish with that weight. After a while, they can get knocked off if you're really fighting the fish good. But, you know, I don't ever tie. You just pull that thing on and then you're fine, you know. But I put 2 different sizes or 2 different shapes because like you might see the different shapes. Now, it doesn't matter too much, but they are designed like this round one is designed more for like rocks and stuff. And these long ones are more like weeds.
Oh.
Because this will go through weeds and stuff, but that long shape will kind of get stuck in the rocks where this one won't as easy.
The round one is more likely to bounce off of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Not really get wedged in between 2 rocks where like how the skinny one would.
Right.
And that big ball like going through some weeds will get hung up a little bit more than that slender little tube.
Yeah. And I feel like you've told me this before, but I got to ask it again. Those weights, the way you said they kind of slide on, the round one slides on too. Like that's the way they're all designed.
Yep. Yeah, they
And
have like a teardrop on it's like a teardrop metal, like piece of metal.
okay. And
shaped kind of
and
with
that's like made to break off so you don't lose your shit. Also, didn't you tell me something like that?
No, there's different stuff where you could put. I mean, if you wanted to be safe, I mean, it should just pull free. Honestly, it's not tied on there, so it should just come off there. But if you wanted to, you could put a line that's lighter from your hook to the bottom if you're using like a spin shot than the line that goes to your reel. You know? Like if you got 12-pound test from your reel to the hook and you put 8-pound test from the hook to the weight, and you have to pull it hard, the line's going to snap on the bottom first.
Yeah, leave the weight behind
because it's weaker.
Yeah,
but the weight, it should just pull free from the weight. It's not on there that good. You know, it's just pinched on there good enough.
So it doesn't snap the line, but it just slides off the line if it gets stuck.
Yeah, it should just pull free.
Oh,
because it's not tied on. It's just there's no knot there. It'll just pull.
You still lose the weight though, right? Like if the weight's stuck, you lose it, and you just pull and slide. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. If there's good tension, it'll probably just pull free. But because the fish isn't eating the weight, you don't really have to worry about it. You know.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in this one, the way you're like in all of it, because I bought drop shot weights and I haven't rigged them up yet, and I think I have a situation. I've kind of talked about it before. I've been watching the local pond for bullhead. And I'm like, this thing's mucky as fuck. I think I should try drop shotting it.
Oh yeah, you can try whatever. Drop shot.
I'll see.
Drop shot isn't necessarily the best thing to do in like a dingy water situation.
Okay.
Because it's more of like a finesse rig.
It is.
Because you're not really like, there's not a lot of movement and stuff. Like drop shot is popular with smallmouths, and I catch walleye and stuff on them. You can use live bait, so you could drop shot rig with like worm and stuff. But if there's catfish you're trying to go for, catfish are on the bottom.
Oh, so you don't want to be that
drop shot. Yeah, they'll probably come up for it, but drop shot rig is not what I would try to use in that situation.
Okay.
You probably just drop it to the bottom or whatever. But drop shot rig is a lot of times, like I use live minnows with the drop shot rig.
Oh, okay.
A lot.
That's actually, is it always a worm? Like I literally wrote that down.
Yeah. No, you can. They have a lot of different soft plastics that you can use. Literally any soft plastic you can put on there. It works. I mean, some of them, if they're too big, it's kind of hard to use, but you can use small ones that are made for it, bigger ones that aren't. Any worm, just any worm would work. And then all you're doing is letting the weight, like letting it fall to the bottom and like reeling it up until there's like a little bit of tension, and then the weight's on the bottom, but your hook is not. And you can just kind of like jiggle it a little bit or like let it fall a little bit. You're basically working a weightless. You're basically getting like a weightless presentation down to the bottom, because the weight is on the bottom, and then the gap that you have from the hook to the bottom or to the weight is just kind of weightless. So if you have like a foot, you can let it fall that foot and then pop it back up and stuff. But a lot of times I won't let it fall that far, and I'll just kind of like jiggle it a little bit. And if I don't get bit, I'll just like lift the rod tip and like let the weight pull towards me a little bit, and then I'll pause it and keep jiggling a little bit too. Because a lot of times when you're jiggling it, because your line's tight, when they bite, you fucking feel that dunk, and then you just lift the rod and And I do great when the crappies move into the weed line, like that last hour of like before sunset. I use crappie minnows or fatheads, and I'll catch walleyes, I'll catch bass, I catch crappie.
Nice.
Yeah. And you can catch all that stuff on artificials too, but the live bait, I really do well with the crappies when it hits that like golden, like I'm talking
the
one
evening
night.
golden hour.
One night a couple of weeks ago, I was specifically going for crappie, and by myself, I caught 8 in like that last like 45 minutes of sunlight. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it can be dope. And then the same with bass. If it's like kind of a mellow day, like after a cold front or whatever, you got to downsize your bait, kind of fish slower and stuff. I'm talking like just cast after cast, and it's almost like cheating. Like when you're talking, like when you're talking about how like I'm catching a fish every cast. Well, other casts you're casting out, you're working it back to the boat, and then you have to cast out again. This you can cast out and just let it sit there forever. Just keep jiggling it, you know?
And yeah.
So
kind of almost like a float, like we were just talking about with like a bobber.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like one of the only ways that you can really keep the bait right where you want to keep it.
Okay. I was going to ask, like, I know that it says, you know, casting and retrieving is a thing with this, right?
Yeah.
Like in a way.
Yeah.
But I wrote down, I was like, so is this just like ice fishing off your boat? No.
I mean, not really, but kind of. You're kind of keeping it in the same spot and just kind of move it and jiggling it in front of the fish's face. But it's like you're casting out and it lands where it lands. And then you can jiggle it a little bit. And if you don't get bit, like I say, you just kind of like raise your rod and like let the weight drag along the bottom. You're moving it a couple more feet towards you, you know, wiggle it a little bit, nothing. Keep working it back. So you can work it back to the boat from a decent cast.
And you just pull in every time you like, as you pull up, you just kind of let it do it. And then as you put as you let your rod back down, you just kind of reel in the slack from that.
Yep. Just kind of like put the rod tip up. Yeah. So if I'm going from like, you know, 9 o'clock to 12.
Yeah.
That I'm keeping that line tight in case something comes and hits it.
Yep. Okay.
And then I'll like roll down, keep the like tension on the line, and then just kind of like, you know, bring it back down to about 9 o'clock and wiggle it and see if anything bites. And if they don't, then I'll move it again and keep working like that.
Yeah. So it's slow. It's not like a cast retrieve, like it's not a cast and retrieve, but like you are casting and then just trying, like you're kind of covering an area with a certain technique, just slowly trying each spot.
Yep.
Little by little.
Yeah. Like if you know where fish are, it really comes in handy. Like if I know I'm on the weed edge and I know there's fish on the weed edge, I just cast on the weed edge and I'm keeping it in that strike zone.
Yeah.
Is what they'll say. You know, I know the fish are there. I'm keeping it right where the fish are instead of like working it through the strike zone.
Yeah.
I'm just in the strike zone. I'm just right there jiggling it in front of their face.
Right.
Just being like, eat this. You know?
Sweet.
And another thing to keep in mind when you're putting that line from the hook to the weight.
Okay.
When you cast out, you lose distance from the bottom. When you're straight down, when the line's straight up, if you got a foot from your weight to the hook, you're a foot off the bottom.
Okay.
But if you cast farther out and you're at an angle, if your weight's here and you got a foot, your hook's over here, now you're only...
Because your weight will be at like a 45-degree angle compared to your hook.
Right.
And so you got to figure out that angle off.
Yeah. So now instead of your foot being directly a foot off the bottom, now that angle.
Right.
Yeah. So you can make longer casts and not, you know, get directly over the fish to spook them. That's one thing. Like with walleyes, I definitely try to make casts from a distance without ever getting close to them. Because if they see me in the clear water, a lot of times I catch far smaller fish.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the younger ones haven't seen everything.
Right.
And they're like, you know, the bigger ones are spookier.
Yeah.
That could be the same thing with bass and stuff too. You know, all of them, it's not a bad idea to try to not let them see you, but you know, it is what it
is. Sometimes they do. And yeah.
Sometimes you pull up on the spot and you go, oh, fuck, I'm right over him. Don't even look at him.
Hold still. If you hold still, they can't see you. It's like a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yeah. If you move, he's going to eat us, I think.
Now, yeah, we definitely did a typical first swing at this, and we bit off more
Yeah.
than we can chew. Because, yeah, we'll say 15 minutes left to keep it
Yeah.
in our area that we like to. So, Tim, which one of these do you got the doc in
How
front of you, or
about
should I just rattle them off and you just say, because we
I
did
don't
mention two of them already, but
yeah, I don't have the doc or nothing, but how about we just talk about Lindy rigs because that's what we talked about initially.
yeah,
And we've been kind of talking about walleyes anyways. So this,
right.
I mean, is almost like on the same. These are 3 rigs that you can use for walleyes because
Oh yeah, I'm gonna put that.
float rigs are
Yep.
huge for walleyes. The drop shot works really well for walleyes, even though it was designed like it was perceived like as a bass setup, but it works awesome for walleyes. You can use artificials and catch walleyes too.
Nice. I never really thought about that or knew that. I know it's been said. I know you said it, but like it just hits again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You can use my biggest walleyes are off artificials,
Sweet.
not live baits.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
There
they
you
get
go.
big. My wife's biggest ones are all about off live baits though. No.
Rookie using live bait.
Okay.
Lindy rig. So we're going to the Lindy rig, you said, right?
Yep.
The only thing,
this one,
my biggest note here is this thing looks crazy.
it's easy. Easy
Yeah?
peasy.
Okay.
Real easy. Real easy.
I'm gonna describe it with words as you get your prop ready. I think you're working on a prop,
I'm ready.
right?
I'm ready. I got him.
A weight, crazy looking weight. What the hell? A stopper, a swivel, a leader, a hook. Okay, that's a lot of stuff. Stopper, swivel,
a swivel.
and then a leader, and then a hook, or more leader line. I don't know. And then a hook at the
Yeah.
end. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but that's what I have written down. I want to hear.
Yeah. No, you're
Oh.
right there. I mean, I would replace stopper with weight,
Oh,
but
So-
that's it.
oh,
Weight,
okay.
weight, swivel, leader, hook.
Weight, swivel. Okay. The one I saw, yeah, there was a couple that I saw, and they had some sort of like bead on it or something in the middle.
Oh
and I
yeah, a
don't
bead.
really
They'll
know
put a
why.
bead. Sometimes they'll put a bead just for an attractant.
Oh, really?
In front of the hook.
Oh,
Yeah, like just like one
Interesting.
red bead. Sometimes they'll put a glow bead on there. Sometimes the hooks will be like rubber coated where there's some color to the hook, just
Okay.
like as an attractant or whatever.
oh, okay. Interesting.
And then sometimes, here's a Lindy. Wait,
Yeah, dude, these weights are weird.
they're kind
I've
of
seen
weird
'em.
looking. Yeah. So you see, like this is the front of it.
Yeah, it's almost
Like,
like
that's the side.
the Easter Island heads.
Yeah. So you can see kind of how it's shaped. Like the line will go through there and it'll just kind of sit. And the reason it's shaped like that is because this will drag kind of on
Oh,
the
so
bottom.
that weight, so the like tiny angle that it's at, I don't know, like 25-degree angle. There's a flat
Yeah.
spot and then another long flat spot. And that short
Yeah.
flat bottom drags across the.
Yeah, well, it'll drag. It can drag across the bottom, or it can get close. Like
Okay.
depending on what you're trying to do, you can set your line so like it's close to the bottom, or you can let it drag on the bottom too.
Okay.
Most of the time, people let them drag on the bottom.
And then the line goes through that, like as a hole in the top and the bottom of that weight.
Yeah, yeah. So the line will go. There's a hole just right in the top there.
Okay.
So you see
Yeah, I see
the
it.
bottom, the main weight's there, and the hole's right on the top. So the line will go through that hole.
Okay.
So the line will come from the reel through this end,
Mm-hmm.
and then it'll go out the back, and then you'll tie on a swivel.
Oh,
So you'll tie on a swivel like that.
yep. And this is
And
just
then
the swivel.
from-
This is just that normal swivel you said. Like it doesn't have
Yep.
that paper clip on it.
Yeah,
Or
just a
for lack
normal
of a
ass
better
swivel.
way.
Well, you could put that clip on it too because some people have like snelled up shit ready to roll, you know?
Oh, okay.
Instead of having to go find a line, you know, like a length of line to tie on there,
Okay.
they have pre-snelled setups because there are like, spinner rigs and stuff too. I mean, you know, that's like talking bottom bouncers and spinning rigs and all this shit. I'm not trying to muck it all up. I'm trying to be simple.
Right.
you
Because
know?
that's the point of what we're trying to do here. Yeah. I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is just a Lindy rig by itself. Now, I should say too, sometimes they will paint these weights.
Yeah. I've seen those
Yeah.
chartreuse ones like that before. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of same things, just like an attractant. Like if you're working in like muckier waters, it's like something else moving that'll kind of like get its attention maybe.
Okay.
But like it's not something that you need to have painted, because if you're working with a different body of water, like a very clear water, you don't want to spook them.
Mm-hmm.
A more natural like metal will not stand out as much and not send off red flags. They might see it moving, but they won't think anything of it. Where if they see a bright color, they might be like, what the fuck's that about? But,
right.
so you have the line goes through the weight, and then you tie it onto the swivel. Simple stuff. The line just moves freely through that weight. You don't tie it on, it just goes through, and you tie to that swivel.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you tie a leader material, fluorocarbon, should be, because it's clear. You don't see it. And then you can do whatever you want for a length. You can go like 18 to like 48 inches or longer, even if you want. If the fish are real spooky and you don't want them to like see the weight so much, you can go really long, like 6-7 feet. If you like, whatever you feel like. You don't necessarily need to do that all the time.
Right. How do you cast that out if there's a weight and a swivel in the way of 7-footer?
You troll this. This is not something that you cast.
Oh.
Yeah. So you just kind of like drop it as you're driving, and you just kind of drag it behind the boat.
Yeah. Okay.
And a lot of times you troll this very slowly, like between like a half a mile an hour to like a mile an hour.
Damn.
Mile an hour is pretty fast for a Lindy rig a lot of times. But you're just barely moving it. You're just kind of dragging this live bait across the ground is what you're basically doing. So you have that line that goes through the hook to the swivel. From the swivel, you got that leader material, whatever length you choose, and then you put that hook. You can put that bead there. Sometimes that bead can provide a little bit of buoyancy to bring it up. Oh. It can be an attractant to like help the fish see it, and then you got the hook, and a lot of times you'll use a relatively small hook so the fish can swim, or your leech can swim more natural, and then you'll just put that hook in the leech or your minnow, and you'll drag it. And what you'll do a lot of times with the spinning reel, you'll open the bail and keep your finger on the line so you can feel it. Oh. And you kind of got your line, you got your rod over the edge of the boat, and you're just waiting, and you'll have your finger on that line. And when you get bit, you feel it. Okay. But a lot of times, because you're working with live bait and like a leech, they're hitting it, but they're not really eating it. And they don't have the hook at this point. Oh. So you feel that tick, and you just point your finger and let that line go out. And what that weight, because that line goes through that weight, what'll happen is you're dragging it, but when you let it go, the weight will sit, and that line can get pulled through there. Oh, right. So they don't feel the weight. They just are able to eat your bait. Oh. And you can just, sometimes you count to 10. Sometimes when they're real spooky, some people count all the way up to a minute. They'll just sit there and wait. And then they'll close the bail and reel, and you just reel until you like feel the weight, and then set the hook. Because you don't know how far out you are or what you drifted away. So a lot of times you'll just like start reeling until you start feeling a little bit of pressure, and then you can lift. And when you lift, you kind of like feel like, is it fighting? Is there something pulling back? Or you lift and there's nothing there, and you go, shit. And then sometimes
all that for nothing. Fuck.
Yeah. So you can reel it in and then see if you got bait, or you can, if you think you got bait, you can open up the bail and just keep dragging it and see what happens.
Right.
Then it's really up to you. And the other thing, if you are noticing that these fish aren't directly on the bottom, so you don't want to drag the bait directly on the bottom, you can get hooks that are like Northland has, they're called gumdrop. and they are like made of foam. What? And they're colored, like they have, like you can get a chartreuse one that has like white eyes, so it kind of looks like the front of a bayfish. Okay. And the hook is like the opposite, is actually kind of like points down.
Okay.
Doesn't matter too much, but like that's just what it is. And you tie that on, and those will float just slightly.
So it
So when
has
you're
like a
dragging
floating jig head on it?
yeah, the jig head is not, there's not lead, it's like foam, so it floats slightly.
Whoa.
Yeah, so
It's called
you're
a gumdrop.
pulling.
That's a good name.
Yeah, gumdrop. Yeah, there's
I
more
like that.
than just them, but like Northland is, from here. We know what they make. I don't
Right.
remember the names of others. Some of them just might be like floating hook. Like, yeah, we get it.
Right.
But so you can do that and just kind of, you're dragging it. And then instead of it being on the bottom, because the hook is buoyant, it's up a little bit.
Right.
Now, depending on how fast you're pulling it, like the current is going to pull it back down a little bit. It's not going to let it just float up the full length.
Right.
But yeah,
the resistance of moving forward, the current that you're creating by dragging it is just going to push it down. Yeah.
And then sometimes they'll have like a worm harness is what they call it too, where it'll be like you have the front hook into a worm, and because the worm is so long, they'll have a second hook from there. Like it'll be like the hook, and then there's another line tied onto that hook, and it goes to the next hook, and you'll put two hooks on the same worm. So you'll put a hook in the front of the worm, and then you'll put a hook a little bit further back.
Oh.
So the worm is like stretched out,
but it's still in the worm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. When you my first picture that I drew in my brain was that you were putting like another hook off of the back of the worm in a way that made it like out there, kind of.
Yeah.
Where I was like, wait, you can do that in Minnesota? I thought it was basically like fishing two hooks on the same rig.
No, it's two hooks, but they're both in the same worm, which
right? Because like you could
fine.
You can throw a crankbait with 3 trebles on it. That's totally fine, but you can't drag a line that you can't basically drag a line.
Yeah,
with
there's
multiple.
2 with 2 trebles. Yeah, you can. Right. Yeah. No, you can put multiple hooks in that situation, and it's the same with like the spinner rigs and stuff too, which I was kind of talking. I didn't really plan on getting into it, but basically all it is like the same idea of like that leader line, but now you're just adding like a spinner blade instead of a bead. So you have a blade that's spinning in front of that hook.
Right.
Single hook for like a minnow or a leech, double hook for like a bigger leech or a worm. Okay. And a lot of times people don't use 2 hooks for a leech because they like that natural motion. You put a second hook in the middle, it makes it a
of the leech is really
because they do like a wave.
Yeah.
Yep. And then those the blade shapes all change and stuff. There's like smile shaped blades that you can fish at lower speeds. They'll kind of like spin without having to go fast. And then there's different blade shapes. Lindy made some for a little while that were called little guys that were like basically like the head of a crankbait almost.
Oh,
that was in front of your hooks.
Yeah.
So it made it swim kind of like a crankbait.
Okay.
In front of it. But yeah, there's a lot of different options that you can kind of tweak. These are the traditional Lindy weights too. They make different ones of those as well. There's slightly different shaped ones.
Okay.
So.
But it's always sort of it's always got a curve to it because of the nature of the Lindy rig, right? Like, that makes sense after hearing what you said.
Lindy had some like curved, different looking ones for a little while that they claimed were like snag proof. And I don't know if they like people did still get snagged with them, or people were just like, I don't give a shit about those. Like my other ones work fine, but those showed up for a while and then like went away. I think everybody's like, the Lindy weight is good.
Like you got it. It's fine. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Like you don't have to reinvent the wheel kind of situation.
Yeah.
Wheel's fine.
Yeah.
Wheel's round.
Good. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, those are like if you know that there's fish out, obviously that one's not going to work too well in like super weedy areas, just dragging a bait.
Right. Right.
So like if you know that there's fish kind of out in a more open area, or they're out in these flats and they're kind of roaming and you can't like really target them, then you can just like drive around and drag the baits.
Right.
If you got another person with you in Minnesota, you can have one line out of each side of the boat. If you're in like Wisconsin, I think you can I don't know how many lines they're allowed to drag, but you could drag 2 of them yourself and just drive slowly until something gets bit, you know?
Right.
And then that one is obviously you can't really do the whole open bail thing with 2 of them. You just kind of drag them around.
It's just out there, fucking wings spread.
Oh.
Got this, dude.
Yeah. Feel a tick on both of them. Each both fingers.
Fucking double bang. Bang them both.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, you mentioned it quickly. So you can buy a Lindy rig pre-rigged, sort of.
You can buy like the Snell's pre-rigged. So you can buy like a Lindy. I don't see a lot of like the pre-rigged like Snell for a Lindy rig where it's just a hook with the line. Okay. But the spinner rigs, which are essentially like kind of the same thing.
Yeah. What does the Snell mean?
All over the place. Snell is like I think it's technically like the knot. But everybody calls them like snelled hooks, where it's like the hook. So it's like a knot that's actually kind of like it goes through the line tie and then it wraps around the hook a couple of times. And then it like when it's pulled tight, it's like a perfect knot that's like wrapped tight around the hook. But then like the snelled ones that you buy already it's like that line is already tied on.
Yeah.
And the line goes up and then there's like a loop that's already tied in perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
So then you would just have to put them on that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And if you had like a snelled Lindy rig, you'd be talking, you know, depending on the size, 18 to like 4 feet is probably what you're buying, but it's like a 4 feet piece of line that has a loop on one end and a hook on the other. So if you get like snapped off or whatever, and you have one of these swivels with the safety pin on it, you just open that up, take the old one off, put the new one on,
right,
and bang.
And the new that's what it is. You just put that new Snell on the swivel and you keep going. Like if you have that safety pin type one. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be super fast. But but I prefer to just tie on shit straight to the swivel. Yeah. I used to use the snelled stuff. Like that's how I was taught to fish. That was the only thing I've ever been shown personally. Like, from my parents, because that's how they used it. Was like
you just got to
the Pokeball bobber down to the weight. Yep. And then from the weight, you got one of the safety pin style swivels. Yep. And then the snelled hook. Yep. And that was it.
Yep. The Eagle Claw you just pulled out of the bag and
hell yeah. Eagle Claw ready to roll. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. Same thing. Different places, different times. Same Minnesota rig.
Yep.
Maybe we should call that one the Minnesota rig. We should look
the Minnesota rig.
All right, dude. I actually have a little bit of pre-production that we have to do before the random take where we're going to talk about some music.
Yeah.
So why don't we take... Well, go ahead.
I was going to say, I should say too, for, down the road or whenever we end up like picking this back up or whatever happens, the other ones we were planning on doing that we didn't end up getting.
Oh yeah, please go ahead.
If you want it, let us know.
Yeah.
We plan on doing it anyways, but if you're like, I need to know, we were going to talk Texas rig, Carolina rig, and wacky rig. Because those are like the 3 other most famous bass rigs out there.
Right.
Yep. So
those are the other ones please. Perfect. Yeah. Great, Tim. Yeah. Please leave a comment. realaf.tv/contact. Let us know if you're like, no, we need to you do those. Okay, maybe episode 101 will come faster than I expected then. Please let us know. You ready, Tim? You ready to switch over to music?
I'm ready. Hell yeah.
Okay, I got a little pre-production, so let's hit the break and then we'll come back with it. Here we go.
Word.
Do it.